Hey guys, today I'm going to be reviewing The Marshmallow Test by Walter Mischel. This is a non-fiction book and it says it's about understanding self-control and how to master it. Written by the famous psychologist. He was the guy who originally did the Marshmallow Test, which is basically where they would sit preschool children down and they would give them a choice of they could either have one marshmallow and eat it right now, or they could wait a little while and then eat two. So it was kind of that thing of like, do you have the self-control to wait and get more later when you know it's better for you, whatever. Amy from Shout Amy, I'll link her channel down below, she hauled this book a little while ago and it just sounded really interesting to me. She hadn't read it yet. I was just purely going off what she said it was about, but I kind of have a passing interest in psychology, I guess. It's one of those things that if I see a non-fiction book about it that sounds interesting, I'll pick it up. I took a psychology class in high school and this test was something that we spoke about at some point, so I was kind of surprised when I was reading this book to realize that it was actually written by the guy who originally invented that test because it was done in the 1960s or something, so the author's probably like kind of old now. Just saying. I think this book was kind of incorrectly marketed as a self-help book. You can see on the cover, like I said, it says understanding self-control and how to master it, and then on the back it talks about using his findings to lose weight or quit smoking or save for retirement, like all these different things that self-control would come in handy for. So I went into it thinking it was a self-help book, and from how Amy had talked about it, I could tell that she had kind of seen it the same way, and people's Goodreads reviews were similar to mine in that way. They all kind of went into this book thinking it was something that it isn't. I think I would have enjoyed it more if I had have realized what it was before I started reading it, because going into a book thinking it's one thing and then it's something else, unless it's amazing, that's never really a good thing. So it was more about the psychology, scientific kind of side of it, so it made it a little more boring than I was anticipating, but that's just me. Obviously if you're more scientifically minded than I am, you might enjoy that aspect a lot. But yeah, for me, because I'm not really like that, it felt a little textbooky, although I'm sure the psychologist who wrote this feels like he's like dumbed it down, you know. But it was basically just because there was a huge focus on the studies and the theories and exactly how the studies were carried out and what the results tell us about how we function. So I think it was looked at in a very scientific way rather than a like, this is how you can apply this to your life kind of way. Despite it not really being what I thought it was, I did find this book really interesting. There were a few standout quotes and little bits of information that I found either just really interesting or inspiring or motivating, and I thought I would just share some of those things with you guys to sum up this book, because the rest of it is kind of more just about the actual experiment and other experiments he did over the years. Experiment feels like the wrong word when you're talking about testing children, so I should say the test. One of the points he makes a lot in the beginning is how crucial self-control is in terms of success. It's really crucial in the successful pursuit of long-term goals. So without any kind of self-control, it's going to be hard to sort of hone in and work towards anything. An example he used was a quote from Bruce Springsteen. Apparently someone was asking him about his success as a musician, and he said something along the lines of, I probably worked harder than anyone else I knew. And I think that's something that kind of gets overlooked sometimes, especially with people in creative industries like musicians, and that people kind of think they're lucky, but actually it's a whole lot of really, really hard work that you need, obviously a lot of self-control to be able to do that. And yeah, he talks about what makes a successful person is often a combination of reasonable talent, but also the ability to keep going in the face of defeat. There's also a lot about, which is something I kind of never thought about before, about how our relationship with our future self determines how we behave in the present. And it's kind of hard for me to explain it adequately, but it's basically the idea that if you think of your future self as a stranger and you feel quite detached from the future, you're less likely to make good decisions now in terms of the long-term benefits, because you're going to feel like less worried about it, I guess. But if you have a sort of close attachment to who you're going to be in the future, then you're more likely to make good decisions because you're going to be thinking about how it's going to affect you in the long term. It's really interesting to me because I find it really hard to picture what I'm going to be doing like 5, 10, 50 years from now, you know. So that's something to think about. And he also offered a solution for how to help with that if you do feel like disconnected from your future self, which I think a lot of people probably do. At least I hope it's not just me. He talks about how if you're struggling to make decisions, like long-term ones, or you find yourself making the wrong decisions or whatever, say you get offered 2 different jobs and you have to choose between them, you should think about it as if you're going to work right now in each of those jobs, and imagine how your entire day would be, like what your day-to-day life would look like, and imagine it as if it's happening right now. Because if you picture it as if it's happening right now, it's going to kind of heat it up in your mind and make it feel more real, which means you're going to make the decision based on what you really want rather than trying to analyze it and think about all the reasons why and why not. Sometimes you just need to think about it in more impulsive, kind of instinctive sort of terms. Same with working towards particular goals. If you are struggling to put in all the hard work towards something that you really want to achieve, you have to think of the outcome, even if it's like a long-term goal. Like, you're not going to be doing this thing for like 5 years from now. You have to think about it as if it's tomorrow and remind yourself why you're doing it and be excited about it. So you kind of just have to really keep very, very fresh in your mind what the end result is going to be, and stop thinking about it as if like, because it's far away, it doesn't matter as much. Don't be daunted by how far away it is. Just be excited that it's going to happen, and ultimately the point is like that's going to help with your self-control. There was a little observation he made, because there was a lot of, you know, conversations he'd had with children for the test, and one young girl made a comment about how important criticism is, and receiving it and actually dealing with it and learning from it, and I thought that was really nice that he included that, and that was from a girl who was like 10 years old or something, so very insightful. And the last interesting thing that I learnt from reading this book was he talks a lot about KIPP schools, which is the Knowledge is Power program. Apparently there are some schools, and he talked about the ones in New York. I'm not sure if they're anywhere else across America, but just schools that have a different way of looking at education. And the reason he talks about them is because of how the kids end up with more self-control. And I just thought it was really interesting, and that's something that I'm going to look more into. If you know anything about that, I would love if you would leave a comment down below telling me what you know, because I find it interesting how there, you know, the different methods of educating young people and how to get the best out of them, not just academically, but preparing them for life kind of thing. So yeah, I gave this book 3 out of 5 stars just because it wasn't really my thing. It was a bit too technical and sciencey, and it wasn't really what I thought it would be, but like I said, there were some interesting bits of information that I learned. So if you've read this, I would love to know your thoughts on it. If you want to keep up with what I'm reading on a regular basis, I'll leave my Goodreads and Twitter and Instagram down below. Subscribe if you haven't already. I upload every Tuesday and Friday. And thank you guys for watching this video. I'll see you next time with my next one. Bye.